In this video, we're going to talk about credit card basics, how they work, and how to use them properly so that you don't get burned. Hello and welcome to The Adult Life, where we give you the tools to be a happy and healthy adult. My name is Simi and I'm the adult in charge. People love spending on credit cards because it feels like free money. I mean, who doesn't want to spend money that's not theirs? But they're also one of the fastest and most devastating ways to get into debt. So let's look into how not to do that. So first off, what's the difference between debit and credit? So a debit card gives you access to your own money that you have saved in a bank account. And a credit card gives you access to credit that you're borrowing from a lender. And the lender usually charges some interest for letting you borrow money from them. And there are actually quite a few benefits to using a credit card. First of all, you get credit, and that basically means that if you're running low on cash or you're waiting for funds to arrive, you can use credit when you're in a pinch and you just pay back at a later date. Using credit cards also allows you to buy things that you might not actually be able to save for all at once and then spread the cost over a long period of time, like a year or 2 years. Other people use credit cards for the benefits that they can get, so sometimes they get points or even air miles just for spending on the card. Another benefit of using credit cards is from Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act, and that basically means that if you spend between £100 and £30,000 on a purchase and the retailer starts messing you about, you can get all of your money back. And I think that's so amazing, because imagine spending £25,000 of your money and then a retailer decides, you know what, actually I'm not going to do this thing that you paid me for. That would be life-changing. So now that we know what credit cards are, how exactly do they work? So let's take a look at Sarah. Now Sarah's a young adult, living her life, having fun, and she's decided that she needs a credit card to start building her credit. So she goes online on a comparison website and looks for a card that she thinks will suit her lifestyle. And in the end, she gets a card that has a £500 limit. So when the card comes, Sarah is having the time of her life. She's going shopping, she's eating out, she's buying all the stuff she wants. And then later on in the month, Sarah gets a lovely letter from the bank asking her to pay some of their money back. Would you have to pay it back? But the problem is, Sarah doesn't really understand the letter and she has no idea how much to pay and how. So let's help her out, shall we? So the bank has sent Sarah a statement showing all of her purchases between the 11th of October and the 10th of November. Now this is known as the billing cycle and it occurs every month. Next, we have the statement date. So the statement date is the last date of the billing cycle and it shows exactly how much she needs to pay so that she doesn't incur any interest for the month. And since this only goes up to the 10th of November, she might have actually done some spending on the 11th, 12th and 13th, but it doesn't show here because that's part of the next billing cycle. But it's always a good idea to keep an eye on this since this counts for next month's spending. And this is what we call the outstanding balance. Now up here we can see the due date, and this is the date that she has to pay the full statement balance so that she doesn't have to pay any interest. So if she doesn't pay her statement balance by the due date, or she doesn't pay the full amount, she could get hit with some late fees, which are usually about £12. And if she's unlucky, she might also get increased interest just because her bank thinks she's no longer trustworthy to pay her bills on time. Ouch. And that's also not good for your credit score. When it comes to actually paying the bill, she's got quite a few options. She could pay off the phone or online or even by check. But in this case, she's actually already set up a direct debit to come out 2 or 3 days before her due date. And the reason it's 2 or 3 days is just in case there's some issues on her side. Maybe she doesn't have enough money in the bank and she can just transfer quickly, or if there are any delays of any other sort. You really don't want to be making late payments. So when it comes to how much she wants to pay, she has 4 options. So the first is to pay off the minimum. The minimum is set by a credit issuer and it's usually 1 to 2.5% of your total statement balance. Well, bear in mind, if you only pay the minimum, you're going to be charged interest on the remaining portion that you didn't pay for. And that's not very money saving. So to avoid paying any interest whatsoever, the second option is to pay the statement balance in full, and that way no interest will be incurred. The third amount she can pay is the current balance, and that includes your statement balance plus any outstanding spending that's been done in the next billing cycle. And finally, she can make any other payment amount as long as it's up to the minimum payment by the due date. She'll be fine. And some of you might have noticed that the due date is the 6th of December, even though the last purchase in this billing cycle was made on the 10th of November. Now this is called the grace period, and it's one of the reasons people love credit cards. Imagine making a purchase on like the 10th or 11th of October and not having to pay until the 6th of December. That's almost 60 days interest free. What's not to love? So now you know how credit cards work, let's look into 1 or 2 terms that might be useful for you going forward. APRs and interest rates. What are they and what do they do? So APR stands for annual percentage rate, and it's basically the yearly cost to you for borrowing money from your lender. Now, every form of credit has an APR, even if it's 0. So loans usually have an APR of 1 to 10%, and credit cards have an APR of 10 to possibly over 50%. Yikes. So as you can see, credit cards are a really expensive way to borrow money. So if you're thinking of borrowing money for a large period of time, you might want to think of other forms of credit that might be available to you. And the APR is used to calculate the interest that you'll have to pay, and this is calculated using the balance that you carry from month to month on your credit card. So obviously the higher the balance, the higher the interest, the higher the APR, the higher the interest. So it's in your interest, pun intended, to make sure that your APR and your balance are as low as possible. So if you're applying for credit, you might see something called RAPR, and that means representative APR. And that's because not everybody that applies for a certain credit card will get the RAPR, even though a minimum of 51% have to get it. But if your credit score is a bit lower than other people's, you might get a higher interest rate. But don't worry, you can always reject it if you don't want it. But bear in mind that even if your credit score is low and you have no choice, as long as you pay off your statement every month, you're not going to incur any interest, so it won't really affect you. Since I'm sure that nobody in the history of credit cards has ever gotten one with the intention of getting into crippling debt, how do so many people get into credit card debt? The most obvious ones is when people get a credit card, they max that one out, then they get another one, then they max that one out, and suddenly they have 5 or 6 cards with 10, 20, and even 50K's worth of debt. I mean, where do you even start from? Other people are a bit lax about their credit cards, so they don't pay on time or they don't pay enough, and they get hit by fees, and then it starts to rack up, and suddenly it spirals out of control and they have no idea what to do. And then other people think they're being responsible, they pay their minimums, but they forget that if you're only paying the minimums, you're just about covering interest. And if you're paying minimums and then still spending, if you're not careful over time, your balance can grow and grow and grow until eventually you realize you can't pay the minimums anymore, even though you could 1, 2, 3, 4 months ago. So to avoid getting into credit card debt, most financial advisors say that you should pay off your statement balance every month to avoid carrying balance. Also make sure that you're not using your credit card to fund a lifestyle that you can't afford. Always make sure you have the money in your bank account, or at least coming in from a regular salary. The thing is, if you think you can manage your payments, carry your balance, pay the minimums, whatever, it's so easy to get a false sense of security, and then one day when you really need credit, it pushes you over the edge, and then you start to be in trouble, you start missing payments and all the like, and it just gets really, really bad really quickly. Obviously, the way you manage your credit cards is up to you, but please, even if you can't or won't pay off your full statement balance, at least make sure you're paying enough to cover interest and make a dent in the principal. And finally, never do this. It's such a waste of money and can cause you to spiral. Never withdraw cash from your credit card. And this is known to credit card companies as a cash advance, and it's treated differently to other purchases. So like I said, if you use your credit card normally, your purchases will have 60-day or whatever grace period before you have to start paying interest on it. But if you have a cash advance, you actually get charged instantly for interest. And on top of that, you have to pay a percentage of what you've withdrawn, or it might be something like a flat fee of £10. Yikes. And if you're using your credit card to pay for things like bills and utilities, or you use it to purchase money equivalents like traveler's checks or gift cards, it's the same thing as a cash advance. So please never do this. It's such a waste of money. Well, there you have it. That's my credit cards for beginners video. I hope you've learned a lot and you're on your way to be financially savvy and use your credit card to the best of your abilities. I really believe that credit cards are a way to get good credit, help you manage your finances as long as you manage them responsibly and you don't go overboard. So I think I might go a bit deeper into credit cards, talking about the different types, talking about how it affects your credit score and how you can use it to make a bit of money. So stay tuned for that video. Well, until next time, see ya!